How do you do, madam? I represent the Hole-in-One Well Drilling Company. Could I interest you in letting me sink a shaft for you?
I beg your pardon?
I'd like to do some drilling on your property. I'm sure you'd find it very worthwhile.
Well, I don't know. A lot of men have approached me with the idea of sinking a shaft.
Really? Well, I'm sure I could do a better job than any of them.
I think you're bragging. What makes you think so?
Well, ma'am, for one thing, I've got the finest tool in these parts. Yes'm, I developed it myself.
All by yourself?
Well, my girlfriend helped a little, but mostly it's my own handwork. Yes, ma'am, I'm mighty proud of my tool. Why, last spring I exhibited it before the Women's Executive Club, and those ladies spent hours just looking at it.
Just looking at it? That doesn't sound very exciting.
Oh, some of them handled it. Why, 3 or 4 of them even climbed on top of it. Some of the biggest women in town were there, and they were mighty pleased with it.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm not big enough.
Oh, don't let that worry you, ma'am.
Tell me, what's so wonderful about this tool of yours?
Well, for one thing, ma'am, it fits any size hole.
Boy, that's a relief.
And it's very efficient. Why, do you know, ma'am, that I've never yet had a failure with it? I've hit a gusher every time I've sunk that tool in a shaft.
A gusher?
Yep. Sometimes it's water, sometimes it's oil, but something always comes.
This sounds more interesting by the minute. Tell me, how do you go about using your tool?
Well, I always start in by clearing away all the brush around the place.
Whatever for?
Oh, it makes it easier to see what I'm sinking my shaft into. And besides, sometimes the brush is so long, it gets all tangled up in the end of the tool.
Well, does that hurt it any?
Oh, no, ma'am, it doesn't hurt. Particularly it doesn't, but it sometimes causes friction, and my tool gets overheated. And you see, when that happens, I have to pull it out of the hole and let it cool for a couple of hours.
My goodness, does it take that long to cool?
Usually it does, unless I pour cold water over it, and when I do that, I have to grease it all over before I use it again.
Where do you think you'd like to sink the shaft?
Well, I think around and back would be best.
Why in back?
Oh, the best place to sink a shaft is where a couple of mounds come together, and you've got a couple of very promising-looking ones in back.
But suppose you find out that that's not a good place.
Then I'll move around in front.
Well, what happens if you get too big a hole?
Why, I just pack it in with dirt.
With dirt? I should think that'd be messy.
Oh, it is, but the whole job is messy. Why, the fumes coming up out of the holes are usually enough to knock a man out. And sometimes I run into an obstruction before I get the shaft halfway in.
Well, what do you do in that case?
Oh, I just pull my tool out and I crawl in head first to clean it out.
You crawl in? Oh!